DCKO number 2 is amazing. Holy cow. I think it's better than anything that's come out of the Absolute Universe so far. I know it's ballsy to say that. Bear with me here because you guys are going to see what I'm talking about. So what this does is this initially opens up with a kind of game that's being played between like Diana and Superman and Batman. Now, I know it doesn't seem overly important, but it is. It's a really important part of this story. The game they're playing was the idea of Tim Drake, and it's predicated on this whole concept. If you couldn't be what you are now, no powers, and you can't be doing the same job, what would you be? And the idea is that they each guess for the other what they think they would be. And so the first turn goes to Clark Kent. He looks at Diana and he's like, I think you would be a tour guide, for national parks or historic sites, showing people the beauty and the humility of nature and all that kind of cool stuff. Diana looks at Bruce Wayne and it was like, I think you'd be a doctor. And so Bruce Wayne in turn looks at Superman and he says, I think you would be president. And Superman rejects this, right? He's like, you can't be serious, right? And the response of Bruce, oh, I'm 100% serious. And so Superman's just kind of like, if I couldn't be Superman or a reporter, I don't know what I would be, but you're way off, Bruce. I do not have that in me to be president of the United States. Keep that in the back of your head. That will become important. So at that point, we jump to the tournament. We jump to the fight between all the superheroes. Now, keep in mind, the whole idea behind DCKO, the rest of which were eliminated in the first round, we already covered that. We'll have a playlist if you want to check it out. The remaining 32 competitors are all competing amongst each other in order to obtain the Omega energy. Now, the cool thing about this is that Snyder kind of breaks this down, right? It says, and so begins the next round. This realm before us took 11 billion years to construct, but was carved inside a microscopic white hole where time moves like light. A blink and it exists. History and all. For the champions themselves, though almost no time has passed between rounds, 32 of them made it through the first gauntlet. They have had no rest, no pause for contemplation. For them, there will only be the battle, as it should be. And so in turn, this disembodied voice comes out and says, welcome champions to the second challenge. I speak as the Heart of Apokolips, your game master. To become the King Omega in his new universe, Darkseid had to take, to collect power from his kind, primordial beings, gods. Here, each of you must do the same, but from your own kind, your fellow champions. Hidden throughout this realm are some of the most powerful items in your universe. This arena is a graveyard of elder gods slain by Darkseid. The items lie in their ruins. When all the items are found, the challenge is over. Whoever is holding an item at that time moves on. Whoever is not holding an item dies. And it says there are only 16 items hidden here and 32 of you. By the end of this challenge, half of you will be no more. And it says, and remember this rule above all, there are no rules of conduct. Nothing matters but winning. Here in this arena, if you follow the example of Darkseid, you will be rewarded. Now, let the challenge begin. So the first question to ask here is, what are these artifacts? Okay, we're gonna shotgun these because honestly, we got a lot to cover over the course of the story. The first one is the Blue Beetle Scarab. Now, it is capable of providing a lot of things to those individuals who wield it, namely the Blue Beetle armor that can kind of modify and adjust itself based on the wearer's needs. But what's particularly important about the Blue Beetle Scarab in relation to this is that it can manipulate stored energy, it can create cocoons, solid constructs, holograms, and it has shields that are strong enough to withstand the abilities of lantern rings. More so than that, it gives the wearer the ability to achieve trans-dimensional travel, to survive in the vacuum of space, and to survive in the bleed, which is the space between universes. The second artifact, the Warlagog, which basically gives the individual some measure of control over time and space. The Adam's Belt, as you can imagine, gives people size alteration. The Mother Box, it grants omniscience as well as matter manipulation. Again, it can also do other things, but that's really the core component of what it can do in relation to all of this. The Psycho Pirate's Mask, which is also known as the Medusa Mask, it can influence the emotions of other people. Thor's hammer is Thor's hammer. Bane's venom is Bane's venom. The Speed Force ring allows the person who's wielding it to tap into the Speed Force and gain all the abilities that come with it. The Genie Pin is actually one of the more obscure, but arguably the most powerful, because the Genie Pin allows its wielder to tap into the power of Is the Genie, which basically grants that individual the ability to alter reality. The Claw of Horus is kind of finicky here. It basically draws power from the magnetic core of any planet that it's on, or even any planetoid, and basically allows an individual to punch with the force of a planet. It's most commonly associated with Hawkman, and so that's going to be kind of a little thing here in a second. The Soul Taker sword is basically the sword of Katana. Those of you guys who ever saw the first Suicide Squad film, it does exactly what it sounds like. The Lasso of Truth is the Lasso of Truth. The Cosmic Rod actually gives its wielder astronomical energy projection powers and transdimensional power. But then the final one, the 16th object, is a mystery item. So here's what I want to know from you guys. Before we get too far into this, I want to know, what do you think the mystery item is? Right? I want you to leave a comment down below. Tell me, what do you think the mystery item is? So now that the battle starts, we're told, and they scatter, right? They're off to the races. Some can sense which item is where. Hawkman senses the Claw of Horus. Cyborg, the Mother Box. Others, like Lex Luthor, have come prepared. His suit contains more scanners than the 10 most powerful military satellites combined. Infrared, heat, synthetic aperture radar. Within a single second, he maps the entire landscape, sees where every item is, and blasts off towards the power rings. But Clark is watching, and if there's one thing Clark is determined to do, is to make sure that Lex Luthor does not win. And so it says, he races after Lex. He takes a moment to slow the other villains too. This is why he's here, he tells himself. This is his part, to make sure the villains fail, all of them, but especially Lex Luthor. And it says, meanwhile, at the site of the Adam's Belt, Diana and Etrigan battle. Now, Etrigan is immensely powerful, right? Gone, the form of man, arise the demon Etrigan. It's what Jason Blood says when he turns into his demonic form. This is not uncharted water for Wonder Woman. She's faced off against demons and monsters and so on and so forth like that before. Justice League Dark is a perfect example. We did cover it. That story is phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing. But every time Etrigan speaks, he rhymes. And so that's why he says, "To you that belt shall not pass. This demon spawn will kick your ass." I admit, princess, you fought well, but you are no match. And then Diana just says, go to hell, right? And just absolutely pummels this guy. But in the midst of that, she starts hunting around, right? She was like, I hate rhymes. Now, where is the belt? And that's where you find Giganta, who's there. She just says, there's only room for one big girl in this challenge. But then Giganta is suddenly overshadowed by this massive being. And he's just like, you call that big? And she's like, what in the hell? And we find out the Joker got the Adam's belt. He is huge. He's gigantic. Dude, it's absolutely crazy, man. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the tip of the iceberg. People get powers that you would never expect them to have. It's so amazing. Dude, let's just keep going. You guys will see what I'm saying. So at that point, Giganta's like, Joker, right? What are you doing? We are on the same side. And Joker's like, oh yeah, I forgot. And then just stomps on her and like smashes this girl. And then he eats her, right? And then at that point it switches and it says, meanwhile, at the God Killer site, you have Plastic Man facing off against Rex Mason. Now here's a funny thing. Number one, I kept wanting to call Rex Mason Molecule Man. That's not true. Metamorpho. Here's the cool thing though, right? Plastic Man's immensely powerful. JLA 98 from Grant Morrison did establish that Martian Manhunter is more powerful than Superman, and Martian Manhunter is the one superhero on Earth that Superman is afraid to fight. However, Plastic Man is OP as hell. So much so that when I made the Injustice videos like 7 years ago, I was like, yeah, man, Plastic Man would kill Superman. And he could, right? Just flood his lungs. He could just destroy Superman in any number of ways. But what happens when Plastic Man, with plastic being a composite element, goes against someone like Metamorpho, who can change into anything? This is dope, because what ends up happening is that Plastic Man says, sorry, Rexy, in preparation for this shindig, I got an upgrade, a sheen of basically super plastic, because it's a whole great big huge word that I can't pronounce. And he says, nothing you can make will dissolve it. And that's when Metamorpho says, except maybe itself. And he says, this material, boiling hot. Thanks for the recipe. And so literally, he boils the Plastic Man. So Metamorpho can overpower Plastic Man. There you go. Now you got a guy that can take him out. And this is dope, right? It's really cool to see something like this, because at that point he says, now for the God Killer sword. The issue is that when he goes for the sword, as he's reconstructing himself, Staro is there. And so Staro is literally just like, nope, you're too slow. But the funny thing is that when Staro goes for the sword, Jay Garrick comes racing by and snatches it up. And he's like, and you were saying, right? At that point, you switch over to Guy Gardner. Now, it is important to keep in mind here, this is not the main Guy Gardner of the DC Universe. This is the time-displaced Guy Gardner from Justice League Unlimited. Basically a little bit of a refresher there. In the crossover story, We Are Yesterday, a whole bunch of superheroes from the past were suddenly brought to the present day. And so that's what you basically get here. Guy Gardner comes across the Speed Force ring. And that's a crazy thing, because not only is he a Green Lantern, he would be a Green Lantern with the powers of the Flash. And so at that point, he's just like, okay, right? A man can never have too many rings, am I right? And so at that point, he gets cracked over the head with a mallet. And this woman just says, Ivy, you'll love this, only to find out it's Harley Quinn, who now has the power of the Flash. At that point, Superman catching up to Lex Luthor, we focus on them. And this is arguably the greatest moment in the entire story, although I will say, Lex Luthor has this moment, oh my god, dude, he has, man, dude, Lex Luthor and Superman, dude, Superman has this crazy, okay, I'm sorry, I'm so excited, people. It's just, you don't understand. Okay, so here's the thing, right? At this point, Superman is just kind of pummeling on Lex Luthor. And the funny thing is, Lex Luthor says, I'm glad that we have this moment, Superman, because I wanted to say thank you. He says, when you put all of us, the Legion of Doom, in the Phantom Zone, I expected it to be just a cage. But what you've made it, therapeutic, a great big huge cosmic couch, it's beautiful, actually, because keep in mind, this Lex Luthor and his Legion of Doom, they're also time displaced, right? They're part of the same story that brought Guy Gardner into the present day. And so he says, as I was floating there, I had an epiphany. And Superman initially dismisses him, right? He was like, I'm not interested. And Lex is like, I figured. And he says, you know, it's a good moment to be a kryptonite enthusiast. What with it so much more common these days? And he says, I've expanded my collection, plenty to choose from. Purple to drain your life force, black to steal your powers, red, pink, so many uses. But what I'm really going to use them for is to get you to listen for once. And he says, so here's my epiphany, Superman. I always thought I hated you because you did too much. You stopped humanity from realizing our potential by saving us from failure. But I was wrong, and I get that now. Because what I really hate you for, if I'm being honest with myself, is doing too little. So thank you for bringing me to the Phantom Zone. It was revelatory. I wanted you to feel what I felt, so I brought it to you. So he brandishes this sword and cuts off Superman's hand. And he's like, in the form of a Phantom Zone blade. Lex Luthor has a lightsaber, son. And so at that point, he gives what's probably the coldest monologue that I think I've ever heard from Lex Luthor. He's like, when I arrived here in the Heart of Apokolips, it gave me a vision of what the universe could be like if I won, of everything remade in my image. I assume it did this for everyone. So what was yours, Superman? A better reality? Far better? Diseases cured, corrupt governments eradicated, a cultural and technological paradise? Am I right? But let me guess, your response to that vision was to reject it. Your goal, even now, is to just put everything back the way it was at the end of all of this. And so while Lex is taunting Superman, he fires off these green kryptonite shards into Superman directly. And so he says, I know how much you like to listen to heartbeats, so listen now. Do you hear them all up there, full of longing and fear? They want your vision. Maybe they didn't in another time, but they do in this one, because things have changed. The center has fallen apart, and everyone feels it. In this era, people are begging for a hero who will fix the problems, the wars, the death, the misery, the terror of it all. They want you to save them. What the Phantom Zone taught me is that I do too, but you never will. And he says, because deep down, you are a coward, Superman. That was my epiphany. Now excuse me while I do what you won't and save the world. And he just takes off, and he just says, feel free to sit back and watch. Dude, it's nuts. It's absolutely amazing. Dude, tell me that's not one of the greatest monologues for Lex Luthor in the history of his character in any media, cartoons, movies, comics, video games, whatever the case happens to be. And so in the midst of all of this, Guy Gardner flies right by. Superman's literally sitting there with shards of green kryptonite dying. He doesn't, and he has a dope moment here in a second, but Guy Gardner flies by and he's just like, look alive, dorks. Guy Gardner for the win. At that point, he's chasing after Hawkman, and Hawkman snatches up a claw of Horus. And at that point, Guy's just like, not again, right? And it says, meanwhile, at the mother box, and Cyborg tracks it down. And he just says, talk to me. And then you jump to the Soul Taker sword, right? Swamp Thing's going after it. The blade belongs to the Green. And then it's just demons, totems. You're no match for a god. And Etrigan just responds, right? You may be mossy and you divine, but believe when I say that sticker is mine. But then like Lobo, it's just like, you're all a bunch of bass stitches, right? Punks is really what it means. And he says, and look at this. I just found my own golden ticket, Venom, the venom of Bane. And so the crazy thing is that in the midst of that, Staro shows up, right? And Staro tries to attack Lobo. And Lobo's like, dude, you don't even have muscles to use this thing. And Staro's like, dude, are you blind? Starfish are 98% muscle. I'm jacked. Give me that thing. And Bane's just like, too late, right? Because he starts injecting himself with the venom. And he's like, now get your slimy but weirdly soft feelers off the main man. And just like rips Staro apart. But anybody who knows anything about Staro and who knows anything about Starfish knows that Lobo just made a massive mistake. Because at that point, Staro is just like another fact about Starfish. We regenerate. And so literally all these pieces of Staro just start attaching to all these heroes. And it gets crazy, right? Like we're literally told, all at once, Staro uses his new host to grab for any items he can. He goes for Supergirl, who holds the Psycho Pirate's mask, and Aquaman, who has the Cosmic Rod. Other hosts he sends to stop the champions from finding items altogether. Flash, he sends to prevent Black Lightning from discovering the Warlagog. Wonder Woman, he sends to take down Zatanna before she can find Thor's hammer. But there's this amazing moment that goes on, right? Because at that point, Wonder Woman says, your parlor tricks will not work on me, Zatanna. And Zatanna just says, right by your side, Diana, listen to my voice. And Wonder Woman, right, again, under the control of Staro, just says, it doesn't matter where you are, she is mine. And that's where Zatanna says, I'm not talking about myself. And she says, Diana, by your side, reach down now. And in that moment, Diana ends up touching Thor's hammer, and all this lightning gets called down by Wonder Woman, which hits every single person that's possessed by Staro. And Staro's overpowered and defeated. And so at that moment, Guy Gardner goes and tries to grab the blue scarab. But in the midst of that, Jason Todd, Red Hood, snatches the thing up and literally is just like, okay, Joker, how's this for a punchline? And goes to fire off all these blasts at the Joker. But the Joker, having the Atom's belt, shrinks down and disappears and starts attacking Big Barda. Because at that point, Big Barda, right, formerly being one of the Furies, basically a new god, just starts screaming out in horror, right? I have not felt pain like this since I was in the fire pits. Something hurts. Only for us to find out the Joker has shrunk down small enough to enter into her brain and is attacking the inside of her head. And then we're told, as the moments pass, more and more items are claimed until only a few remain, like the Thunder Pin. And that's crazy because at that point, King Shark is just like going to claim the thing for himself, and he goes against Vixen. Now, here's a crazy thing. Vixen is arguably the most underappreciated superhero in DC Comics. She's amazing because in the same way that like Swamp Thing can control the Green, she can literally manipulate the forms of animals. And so that's what she does, because where King Shark is just kind of like, I'm a great white shark, channel whatever you want. I'm the top of the pyramid, toughest fish in the ocean. And Vixen's like, but see, I can channel the powers of anything on Earth, including Dinosaur Island. So she manifests a Megalodon shark, and it's just like, where there are way bigger fish than you, and takes out King Shark. The problem with all of this is that Etrigan gets his hands on the genie pin, right? So now he can manipulate the power of Is. So reality warping is essentially all of his own. In the middle of that, Zatanna goes for the sword, and she says, we're close. Almost all the items have been found. We have to get the last few. And then at that moment, Lex Luthor takes off because she says, the Legion of Doom is going after all of them. We have to get them before they do. So Lex Luthor catches up to all the power rings that are just sitting there. But the funny thing is, he doesn't get them all. Instead, Carol Ferris, Star Sapphire, shows up and attacks him with the full might, right? Manifesting the entirety of the Fortress of Solitude. And it says that, right? She hits him with a construct of the entire Fortress of Solitude and goes to collect her prize. She has every single power ring except for the Black Lantern ring. Now, why this matters is because those who can wield all the power rings traditionally become the White Lantern, able to alter reality on a universal scale. But without the Black Lantern ring, she can't necessarily achieve that level of power. But here's the funny thing. It says she pulls her hands away from the hydraulic claw cable just in time. And she says, nice try, Luthor, but I still have all the power rings. And Lex just says, I did manage to snatch one, the only one I was truly after. And she just kind of dismisses it, right? And says, keep it. What good is the Black Power Ring when there are no dead to control? And Lex just looks at her and says, are you sure about that? Now, we'll talk about what that means here in a second, because I know that for a lot of you guys, your initial thought is probably all the superheroes who have died in the DC KO event up to this point. Wrong. That's not what's happening. So the crazy thing is it jumps back to Superman, who's clearly succumbing to the influence of the kryptonite in his system, and it says across the island, Clark senses the game coming to a close. They all do. He tries to stand, but the kryptonite shards Lex fired into his body will not let him. But before he can even call Captain Adam's name, he feels it, a rumbling, and he just knows Lex has won, because using the Black Lantern ring, he resurrects all the dead Elder Gods that Darkseid had killed in this place. Because remember what it said at the beginning, this place houses the corpses of the Elder Gods that Darkseid had slain to attain his power. That's the New 52 origin for Darkseid, being made manifest here, which is probably worth covering because it's really, really dope. It quite literally explains how Darkseid went from Yuxas to this just absolute force of nature seeking to conquer and control everything in existence. And so it says, one by one, Lex uses the Elder Gods to take them out, the heroes, Clark's friends, and all the while, Lex never takes his eyes off Superman. And so at that point, it jumps back to the conversation, right? That conversation at the beginning of the story that I told you was so incredibly important because Lois asked, okay, Clark, what's your answer? Choose. What would you be if you couldn't be what you are now? And Clark just says, yeah, I don't know, Lois, like a fireman? And Bruce is like, stop, right? And Clark just says, I wouldn't be a politician, Bruce. It's never even crossed my mind. And that's where Bruce says, because you have him, Superman. And literally Clark's just like, so what's your point? And Bruce says, my point is, you always look to do the most good possible. That's who you are. You are a strategist, same as me and Diana, but in your own way. And right now, your math works. And so that's why Clark's just like, thanks, right? Can I have my Superman now, please? And Bruce just says no, because things change, Clark. That's what games like this are about. Figuring out a new math if one is needed. Dude, it's crazy, right? And so Diana's just like, and here I thought they were just about relaxing. And so Clark says, seriously, Bruce, we're supposed to be having fun here. What's the issue? And Bruce says, you know what? You're right. Here, Clark, here's your little Superman back. That's the important lesson, because while all these forces, right, these Elder Gods are being resurrected by Lex Luthor, Lex just says, it's over, Superman. And then we get this amazing line. Dude, it's so amazing. We get this amazing line, right? It says, his hand throbs. His body is one long scream. He tries, though. He tries to figure out some new math, some way, and then suddenly the rules come back to him. Follow the example of Darkseid, and you shall be rewarded, right? The example of Darkseid, who sacrificed not just his hand, but his life to become something more. Clark thinks of the mystery item, one of the only things left unclaimed, and he grabs the kryptonite shard in his shoulder, and just before Lex brings the Elder God's foot down on his body, crushing it, Clark ends Superman. And that's where Lex is just like, who's the real Superman now, old friend? And then he just says, I am Luthor, I am Superman. And Superman is, because the mystery item is the Omega Sanction of Darkseid, the power of Darkseid himself. Son, let me tell you something, son. If God was writing comic books right now, this is what it would look like right now. Dude, I told you guys, it's amazing, it's amazing. And he says he decimates the Elder Gods just as Darkseid did eons ago, and it feels good. He will stop them all. Luthor, Joker, and Luthor's freaking out, right? He's pissed. And Superman says, you lose, Luthor. But then it says, but before Clark can fire champions, all items have been claimed. The challenge is now over. Those of you without items are eliminated. Those of you with items in your possession, congratulations, you move on. Literally, Lex Luthor was saved by the bell. He was saved by the bell. And that's where he just tells Superman, I will see you next round. And so it says, there you have it. The surviving 16 champions moving to the next level. They can all feel their closeness to victory. They have the taste for it now. For the fight, the competition. But the game is not only being played here. And I told you guys, there was a crazy ending to this story, right? It's being played outside the tournament as well. Because at that point, you focus on Time Trapper Doomsday and World Forger alongside Booster Gold. Because Booster Gold, having the ability to manipulate time, is basically helping them in their efforts, right? They're at the Watchtower. And so that's why Time Trapper Doomsday says, the fire pits burn bright with Omega energy as our champions get closer to the center. Soon, we may have a new King Omega. There is hope. We just have to continue to hold the time barrier against Darkseid. And then Booster says, unless we don't. And that's where Time Trapper's like, what do you mean, Booster? And Booster says, oh, Time Trapper, you've spent too much time with the Kryptonian. You've become soft in your old age. There is no need for a new King Omega. We already have ours. Me, Darkseid. And it's time I entered the arena. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. I told you guys, this story is incredible. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I will catch you all later. Peace.